have a proper experience. Hold on, I want to make sure. So you are Bonnie. There's no like light P in there, but like Pani. It's just Bonnie.
No, it's Pani.
Why do you say like Bonnie?
Because when you read Pani, you're naturally want to go Pani. So then I put like Bonnie. So it's
right,
just like a reference of like how to pronounce the word. So
well,
Pani,
you need
like
to put
Bonnie.
like Bonnie with a P then, Pani.
But then I thought that would be self-explanatory. Since the
Nope,
P
not for this guy, Bonnie. Not for this guy.
Since the P is like right there.
I don't know. I'm a big dumb American. These things, life is not easy.
No, I know my name is not easy. Like it's simple. It's only 4 letters, but it's just fascinating how many people struggle with it.
Well, yeah. No, I specific because we've talked and we've been through this, but it's been a handful of months. I was like, I want to make sure, and so I like went back on your Instagram. I was like, okay, I'm going in with
Yeah.
Bonnie. That's what it's. I'm gonna go in. All right,
No, but also the one time we met, like it was in like this huge party, and we were like,
That's true.
definitely not sober.
That is,
So
that is true.
I don't blame you. That was a really, really fun party.
That was good.
That was a random place to also see you. I like saw you in the cave. I
Oh
saw
yeah.
you at the end of the cave. I was like, is that him? Is that Aaron? I'm gonna go up and say hi. And like as you like think you know someone, but you're not too sure. And it's like that slow walk towards them to see when they see you, is there like familiarity in their eyes or not?
Sure.
Like I was kind of like doing that, waiting for you to recognize me.
Well, and then there's the dance that people do that I've been a part of many times, where it's like, I don't want to recognize you. This didn't happen with that. So it was just like, hey, but this is a thing that can happen, and it's just interesting with like interpersonal relationships, human psychology, where you see somebody and you don't want to be necessarily the one that recognizes and then have the potential vulnerability of being shut down by them. Like, who the hell are you? So then you're like, okay, like I know who you are, but I'm not going to say anything. And then the other person is doing the same thing, and then you're like, star-crossed friends.
I don't have that level of intelligence. If I see someone I know, I just go straight up to them, like, hi.
That's good. That's what children do. That's like what nature is. That's what we get wrapped up in our stories, and defense mechanisms and persona. We're all children,
Yeah,
like
there's this really but there's this really fun test I took, like one of these like Quizlet like fun tests you take online, and it tells you what age you are mentally. It's like a fun test. I don't think it's like science based or anything like that.
What were you?
I got 14.
Woo! Damn.
Which I think is a good age, because like I thought I would be like 5 mentally, but I got 14. So I was like, I'm like mature and shit.
You got leveled up. That's very nice. Yeah, that's very cute. Yeah, all of the little subtle defense mechanisms that we navigate the world with, I think, are very interesting and very sweet. And it's like when you see somebody, for example, and I get into this like body language and such, and all the stuff that I do, because I think it's just like endlessly fascinating. But like seeing someone crossing their arms, or like rubbing their hands together, rubbing their knees, or pacing kind of back and forth, or any of that, those are all, they can mean different things, but those are self-soothing mechanisms. So I think ultimately we want to feel connected, we want to feel safe, we want to feel a part of something larger than ourselves. And sometimes in certain social situations, you might see someone kind of doing those certain postural expressions, and one could take that as like, oh, that person's kind of standoffish, or that person doesn't like me, or they're kind of a jerk or a bitch or whatever. Or you can come from the other absolute possibility that person actually feels insecure or uncomfortable or kind of out of place, and they're going in their own self-soothing experience. And I just think it's such a sweet, it's such a sweet thing to like watch the human, and then like
Yeah.
watch yourself as the human as well. It's very cute.
No, it's very interesting. And, like actually, this is probably a good moment to bring up your book, because I was just telling you, I was reading the first chapter, and it literally starts by talking about body language and posture. And it was so fascinating to me, and especially the way you like chose to dive into that topic. Like I was reading it, I was like super into it, and then you came on, and like I had to stop reading. But you guys also, like, this is his book, The Align Method, a modern movement guide for a stronger body, sharper mind, and stress-proof life. And you're talking about posture, how like somebody approaches another person, and with the level of like confidence or self-esteem, and you can like, especially like someone like you who studies this type of stuff, when you look at someone, you can almost know if this person's going to be a closer in this specific interaction or not, just from the way they carry themselves.
Yeah.
But I think it could also be a good way or a bad way, depending on how it's used, if people use it to manipulate each other.
Of
Like
course.
here's the thing, like I know about body language, right? And let's say I don't like you as a person, but next time I see you, I can manipulate you by showing a different body language that shows that I like you, right? So instead
Mhm.
of like closing myself off and like slightly like looking to a different side, another thing about body language is like if your feet are facing a person, it means you like them, right?
It means you want more, you're engaged.
Right. So it's like you can also like do these things to manipulate people into thinking like they like you,
Yeah. And you
right?
can also manipulate yourself into changing your perception of the world, because you perceive the world around you through a filter. Everything
Mm-hmm.
is subjective. There's no objective. I like that person. I don't like that person. Pain, not pain. Like some people have a relationship with pain that it feels like really good. They're like attracted to pain. They have like a kink on pain. Some people are like highly resistant to the idea of any type of pain or coldness. Some
Yeah.
people cold plunge, and they get into a cold plunge and they run the story or the concept of the idea that this is health inducing and I'm boosting brown fat and I'm, boosting my, my tuning my neurochemistry to feel happier. Like I see the benefits of this, so I can accept this objective experience
Mm-hmm.
of coldness and subjectively interpret it as like, oh man, this is great. I love this. And so so that's the kind of the internal stories that we're running. But then those stories can shift based off of the postural feedback that we expose ourselves to, or that we practice or we engage with. And so postural feedback is a term for the way that our postural patterns affect the way that we think and the way that we feel. And that
Mm.
was one of the that you'll get. I don't know if it sounds like you just started the posture and personality chapter, so you haven't gotten to this part, but there's a study that I referenced from University of San Francisco, where they had two different groups recall memories, and they had one group go into a hunched over position, like
Mm-hmm.
essentially like staring at your phone, forward head posture, all that stuff. The other group was in a like upright, strong, stable, like
Mm-hmm.
winning position. And it was easier in that there's tons of different research similar to this.
Yeah.
But in this specific example, it's easier for the hunched over people to access more like, memories that they were in that position. They were losing,
Mm.
they were defending, they were, they were afraid, they got broken up with
Yeah.
somebody. And then the inverse is true with someone in an upright position. It invokes that memory, it kind of gets into that memory bank of the times that you felt like you were winning, you felt like you were good, you were strong. And so even as we're
Mm-hmm.
communicating with each other, it's not just a I gather information from somebody else and it changes the way I feel. It's also I can change the way that I feel and
Mm-hmm.
also the way that I interpret this experience based off of the way that I carry myself.
Yeah.
So you can trick yourself as
Yeah. So
well.
it's not that.
It's not just I'm
Yeah.
tricking somebody else, and you might start to like someone, and this can happen as well when you see if you're like resting bitch face, glass half full type person, like perennial pessimist. No matter what the scenario is.
Glass half empty.
Did I say half full?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, right. Glass half empty. If you're the glass
Right.
half empty person, and no matter the scenario, you're just like, oh man, wow, this meal is amazing, right? Isn't this so good? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but it came out a little late. It could be a little warmer. It's like, you're ruining the vibe, And so you can go into the world with that, and you will literally,
Yeah.
with that perception, you will eat the meal from a place of lack. You'll eat the meal from a place of disappointment, and it won't taste that good because you won't allow yourself to enjoy the flavor. Or you can change things up, and you can maybe change your postural positions, maybe force a smile, maybe open up your eyes, maybe do a little dance, a wiggle thing, and then eat that meal. And suddenly you're like, you know what? Like, I'm so grateful to have a plate of food in front of me. Ah, this is so delicious. Like, you can taste like the savory notes or whatever, and,
Wouldn't
and
that
so
be a lie?
which
Aren't you
part?
lying to yourself though? Like, I get the glass half full and the glass half empty
Yep.
part of it. Like, and I agree with that to like a certain point of, yeah, be grateful, be optimistic, be positive.
Mhm.
Choose to see the world around you from a positive lens, and you will have a more positive experience living in that world. But at the same time, it's like, how far are you really supposed to take that? So if your food sucks, are you supposed to then not admit that it sucks and just like say that it's amazing? So
No,
to what extent does that go?
it's with anything. Well, I mean, ultimately, we're all creating our own reality. We're all in our own dreams. So you're the author of your story. So whatever you
Yeah.
prefer, really.
Yeah.
And so in the story that I'm creating, and everyone can individually, write, fill in their pages as they choose. Um, there is the possibility of finding to see the positive, or like the developmental parts of your moments, of your days. That's a muscle. And
Yeah.
at any point, we all have the option to flip into gear. Everything sucks. That's a choice. And right now, in this moment, I could, I'm in my place here. There's, I could literally just open up a Rolodex of 100 things that I'd like to be different. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's the other gear that I can engage with, of saying like, wow, like my health is like real good.
Yeah.
That to get to share this experience with this intelligent, beautiful, like fun, exciting person on the other side, and be able to like play with ideas, like, wow, that's so cool. Like air, like it's, you have the choice to
Yeah.
choose those things, and they become muscles, and they become habituated patterns.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then within that, there's also like actually have an interview with Tony Robbins in like 6 days. So I'm very like Tony
Oh,
Robbins
sick.
here right
That's
now.
awesome.
And so, but one of the things that I've heard him say is you can't just like meditate the weeds away, or you can't just like positive affirmation the weeds away. Like, you actually have to go outside and pick the fucking weeds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there's being self-aware that, okay, there are things that can change, and there is space for me to grow, and I'm going to do the work to engage with that. And does it support my growth to come from a lens of pessimism? Yes or no? If it does support my growth and my expansion and my creativity and my relationship building, and all of the different factors, then be pessimistic. Look at everything as it's kind of gray, and it's like it could be better.
Yeah.
But for Alan Watts has a bit about this as well, whereas operating through life through the lens of worry is just, it's you're choosing to carry extra weight, but you're going in the same direction anyway. You're just making the choice to hold on to all of this baggage. So that's a very
Yeah.
long, kind of rambling description, but I think it's a very like nuanced, like a highly nuanced conversation. Like, is it,
Yeah.
are you lying to yourself? It's like, oh, well, yes, no, it's
Yeah.
kind of both.
Yeah. Because I think there's like such a desire for everyone, or not everyone, but like most of the people, at least the ones that I meet, like people want to be realistic, right? So it's
Mhm.
like if you tell them, well, no, like it's better to think positive. It's just like it makes your life easier. It just makes you a happier person. And then it's like, well, no, if something is not positive, I don't want to pretend like it's positive because I want to be a realistic person. I want to say it as it is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So then the challenge to that is, what you're saying is like in any situation, you can see the positive, you can see the negative. Like with the food that I was bringing an example of earlier, it's like, okay, maybe if the food is not that great, maybe don't try to focus so much on the food. Try to focus on the weather that day. Try to focus on the company that you have while you're having that food. Maybe the company doesn't suck. Maybe,
Yeah.
like the rest of your day is amazing. Your health is amazing, like your hair is not falling out, whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
you can still choose to focus on all this like things that are positive around, or you could focus on the food
Well,
that sucks.
so that's what you're describing is an emotionally adaptable human being,
Yeah.
like that emotionally robust human being, like a person that is, if you're working out, you could expose a person that's really highly adaptable when they're training. You could expose them to anything. We're going out in this 20-degree day. It's raining, or I guess snowing at that point, sleeting, whatever, and it's like cloudy and windy. And it's like, well, we're rucking, and get your
Mm.
backpack and we're going to the mountains. You're like, oh, great. I got that. No problem. And then, okay, now it's really sunny. We're going to play volleyball. So that's like coordination, hand-eye stuff. You got to be able to jump. Now we're going to do
Yeah.
parkour. So the person from that physically adaptive place, there is no bad day. There is no bad scenario. There is no, I don't really do. That's, I think that to me is going to be it's like an insurance policy for your own fulfillment and contentment and,
Mm.
like capacity to express joy throughout your life. But if you're a person that you have a very narrow window of what's acceptable, I think that you're a liability. I think that with that, it's like, that's fine, but you're probably going to break at some point, and it's going to
Yeah.
be very uncomfortable. And you haven't broken yet because you've been protected from your environmental conditions or your family, or maybe you're a prince or a princess or whatever. And so they kind of keep you in this little fragile box.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're going to go outside, and shit's going to get real. And then it's from you. It's like, well, how adaptable are you to a variety of scenarios? And I think that if you're a person that, if you go to a restaurant and you're a jerk off to the waiter or waitress,
Oh,
and
I
you're
hate
like,
those
oh,
people.
this like, I'm too good for this. It's like, fuck you. Like, like, who do you think you are? Like the, like literally, like you need more exposure. You don't have any
Yeah.
exposure. And so if you were exposed to some real shit in your life, and I'm not putting myself in the position like I'm exposed to real shit, but like, I think it does us well to sleep on a hard mat every now and again. It does us well to go into a country where they're actually dealing with problems, and be around
Yeah.
people that is like, no, like it's hard for me to get food. Like, my children are malnourished. Like, that having that exposure to the reality of the world, you can come back and say like, oh wow, like this food that's came 4 minutes later than I would have preferred, and is just a little bit, sub perfect temperature. I can probably get through this. And in fact, I can probably find joy in this moment. And then maybe it's so bad that now it's like like a, I don't know, a horror movie, or like a serious movie that's so bad it becomes a comedy. So now it's like, okay,
Yeah.
this is so ridiculously terrible that I can find the humor in it. That's, again, it's an emotionally adaptable person.
What do you think about complaining? And I'm not talking about people that are just like so obviously the complainer, like everybody in the group knows them as the complainer.
Yeah.
Obviously, not to that extent, but like let's say you just had a really like long hike in a really cold day, and you go to finally eat after hours of being so tired and so cold, and then your food takes so long, and then once it gets there it's cold and it's not what you want. I'm not saying you should like, do whatever you just said to the waiter, But what do you think about a situation like that? Like, do you as a person, like, I'm so curious about this. Like, do you as a person who has mastered this like these topics that we're talking about, like, would you say in that moment, do you still choose to focus on the positivity? Or do you let yourself be a little like negative in that moment?
I haven't mastered anything. I'm like definitely well in process of all this stuff. These are ideals what I'm talking about right now. But I've got all sorts of shit I can work on. And
Right.
I think that there's the potential of having like like the positive vibes only guy, where they're just bypassing like actually looking at any of the way that they actually feel. So I think that there's that. And then if you are feeling a way, be with that way. So if you're irritated, if you're ashamed, if you're uncomfortable, if you're, any of the things, you're craving a thing, you're craving food, you're craving sex, you're craving drugs, you're craving whatever the thing is that's fulfilling this sensation of, I don't know, like a voidful sensation or inadequacy or whatever it may be. Making the choice to actively be with that and say, okay, this is information. So this sensation that I'm feeling where I'm angry, I'm aggressive, I'm annoyed, I'm put off, any of that, I have the choice to maybe act out and punch somebody in the face. So now suddenly I'm like polluting the world around me with my lack of emotional hygiene. So it's not just an internal experience where I can say, like, what is this? Okay, I'm going to fully be with it all the way. And maybe I can start to come in and do some type like somatic type work. And I can start to see like, where do I feel the sensation in my body? Okay, I feel maybe with the waiter, I feel like they weren't paying attention to me enough. I feel unworthy of attention. Okay, where do I feel that unworthiness of attention or care? I feel this kind of, maybe I feel it in my abdomen. I feel like tightness in my abdomen. Oh, okay, cool. Let's talk about that. So does that tightness, does it feel like, is there a
And you're
texture
talking
to it?
to yourself,
Talking to
right?
yourself or talking to somebody else. You could say like, oh,
Okay.
I feel this in my body. So as opposed to this sensation being, this sensation is me. This is the entirety of my meanness. Instead, you're saying, oh, I'm having a physiological reaction right now to my food being not what I anticipated. And I can literally feel that like anger or dismay or where it may be. I can feel it in my fill in the blank place, my stomach, my back of my neck, my jaw is getting tight. Now suddenly there's a little bit of space or like a non-attachment sorts or spaciousness between the you and like the observer you and this sensation of feeling pissed off. And then you can sit with it and you can talk about it and you can observe it. And then now suddenly you being pissed is sitting with the wiser, broader, like universal you being pissed off, disgruntled little girl or little boy is on the table with the wise, old, timeless you. They're saying like, okay, I understand this. I can be with that, and
Yeah.
I can have compassion for that. And I can see why you're so mad right now. It's not because of the food. It's because of the food was sending some information. It kind of like queued up some trigger for you that reminded you of something else. And now here you are all
Yeah, of the
disgruntled.
fact that this restaurant sucks.
Sure, that it could be that. And then maybe within that, it's like, what are you mad at with that? Maybe it's like, oh, I make bad decisions. Like, what is the why behind the anger or the annoyance or any of that?
But it's also that you're tired. Like, I've noticed this about myself. If I'm not tired, I can I can do all of these practices that I've learned and I try to do all the time. And
Mhm.
I want to say like 90% of the time, I successfully do them. I successfully pull myself back from complaining or losing my temper, or, like saying something that I would later regret. These practices have helped me so much. But if I'm tired and hungry,
Mhm. Yeah,
no.
if you're tired and hungry, but tired and hungry is also subjective. So
I mean,
if a person expands their container for tiredness or hunger, so like the longest fast I think was 368 days, I think.
No fucking
Something like
way.
something like that. It was
What?
over a year. Yeah, you can look it up
Dude.
on the on the Google now. It was a fella. He started off like 300 some pounds, and it was supervised by doctors and all that. And yeah, it was over a year long fast.
Oh, I
And
thought it would be like a monk, not like an overweight person.
no, it's just a big fella. And so his
Oh.
body just went, yeah, his body went like full ketosis, just Krebs cycle, just breaking down fats.
He didn't
Not
eat
just
anything
not just
for a
Krebs cycle,
year?
other cycles too. Yeah, yeah.
He
You
didn't
look it
eat
up.
any?
Yeah,
I
I don't
thought you
remember his.
would die.
Yeah, I don't remember his. I'm halfway tempted to look it up right now, anyways. But people can look it up at home. And so within that, like your sensation of hunger is for one thing, it's that you have hormones called leptin and ghrelin, and they
Mm-hmm.
indicate or incite you to feel this sensation of hunger or satiation, and those are cyclical throughout the day. So your experience of hunger is a subjective experience. Your hunger, it's not to say it's wrong or right, but on the other side of that hunger, if you moved through it, would be still another cycle of feeling satiated if you chose not to eat. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually that comes to a point where it's like, okay, now, the healthiest thing for me really is food. But even the idea of hunger it still is a subjective experience. And the more that you wind yourself up into stories,
Mm-hmm.
the more real it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And so even
I do
within
agree
that,
with that.
that
Yeah.
is a container that can change shape. And there's some people that if and again, these are going to be more like precious coddled people,
Yeah.
so it's like what's the phrase, good times make weak
I
people
love that.
make bad times or
Yeah.
hard times, and then hard
Hard time.
times make strong people, and strong people make good times.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So if we
Yeah.
are a coddled species, or a
Which we
coddled
are.
individual, not everybody, but a lot of people are, and that's right now globally, we're going through this winter type experience, where it's like, oh, it's like
Mm.
for a lot of people, some hard times, and
Yeah.
most of I believe this is again a Tony Robbins thing. I've been studying all this stuff last week, but something I've heard him regurgitate was that 68% of the Fortune 1000 companies started during times of recession. So
Wow.
when you're in those times where it is like really hard, there is still opportunity there. But if you are a emotionally broke person, and you don't really have the skill set or the robusticity mentally, physically, emotionally, relationships, you haven't invested in like the foundation of that, a hard time could turn you into snapping. And if,
Yeah.
or a hard time could be, oh, it's 20 degrees out, it's sleeting, and I'm going to lead a run because fuck yeah. Like you can't make up this kind of weather. Like I'm actively seeking out the hard thing. I've tuned my gear to that.
Yeah.
So now I'm actually looking forward to things to be difficult. And so that's a choice. And it's something that a
Yeah.
person can cultivate and develop within themselves. And then if hard things never come, whatever, it doesn't matter. If hard things do come, whatever, great. But what you have there is then you have the potential to release the contraction and the resistance of the bad thing coming, because you've
Mm-hmm.
actually retuned yourself to say like, no, I'm actually looking for that. That was very long as well. Hopefully some of that made sense.
100%. So basically what like a main thing I get out of that is that when at the end of that cold and long hike you get your food late and your food is not what you expected, now you have this story that you tell yourself that excuses you to act like an asshole,
Correct.
right? It's not so much that the situation is so, like magnificent that like you're so hungry and you're so cold and now your food sucks so much, but because you tell that yourself this story, it justifies it for you to then either like complain or be a bitch about it and this and that.
Yeah.
It's really just that story that you tell yourself. But then if that story changes to like, let's say something that you would tell yourself, right, which is like, what would it be? What would be the story you tell yourself in that
Well,
moment of super tired and your food sucks?
well, again, this is I'm speaking to my ideal self right now.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of times where I'm like, fuck my life, I'm a
Yeah. No
loser,
one's
this
perfect.
sucks, like what are we, nothing feels good. And this sensation isn't just, I'm not just like meditating, observing this sensation in my abdomen. I feel overwhelmed with what the fuck.
Yeah.
Like that also is, I'm by no means like putting myself
Look,
up on
we're
some
just gonna
pedestal.
pretend like you're perfect.
Okay, we could do that. We could do that. Fine. For the sake of the like the heuristics of where to go with this, we could do that. I could be like a metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so all right, so yes, I'll respond to that. And then I think that going deeper in the question of like what how are you being served by going into kind of like a self-entitled, I deserve more, I won't accept this place. I think what that typically is suggesting is the person probably ultimately feels maybe a little bit insecure with their identity or how much they do deserve or who
Yeah.
they are. And now here's a moment that's perhaps inciting some of those sensations of like, oh, I didn't get the royal treatment. Right.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to respond and I'm going to I'm going to reaffirm that I am the entitled,
With
like
ego. Yeah.
strong, I mean, not strong, but like privileged, like I am the king. I am the queen, and I think that a person that, and this is kind of like the I Ching gets into this, I mean, lots of books get into this, but the I Ching has various different bits about, like the true like king or ruler or leader, the people that they're leading, they don't necessarily, he doesn't need to like tell them that I'm the leader or tell them that I'm the king. He leads through his, or she leads through her actions and
Yes.
their existence. It's not like this staying like, haha, like I'm up here. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we're doing when we throw a tizzy. It's like
Yeah.
ultimately we feel a little insecure with who we are and what we deserve. And
Yeah.
that's a moment that's starting to pick at that. And then we respond by, kind of going into this like self-entitled prince or princess type state. What do you
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
do, what do you what do you think about that? Because I'm kind of spitballing right now.
Um, no, I 100% agree with what you're saying. Like it could be like an ego thing, and a lot of times is because you want to be seen, and there's the story that you tell yourself about yourself, and when you feel like that story is not seen mutually by other people, you feel like you need to make it seen.
Yeah.
Um, but here's something that I just thought about as you were mentioning that. Sometimes you have pet peeves, right? And this is something that I consciously thought about a while ago. And I chose one thing. And I thought to myself, it's okay to pick one thing out of all the things to be a bitch about. And so I picked my pet peeves. I was like, okay, what are the things that I hate the most? Lack of sleep, cold, bad food, and math. These are the four things I hate the most. I came to conclusion that I have to make peace with three of them, and only one of them is something that I will allow myself to like let it ruin my mood, or if it's good, or like if it's like what I desire, then it can like change my mood for the better. And that
Mhm.
is food, which is probably why I'm holding on to this topic since we started talking for so long, because you brought up the food at the restaurant, and I was like,
Oh no.
with that example, you're going somewhere in
That's
me.
my that's my bitch pass. Do not mess with my bitch pass. That's get one.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why like we've been talking about this for so long. Just
Well, I
because
think it's
that's like
good.
my biggest pet peeve. It's like, look, if I'm having a bad, but it goes the other way too. If I'm having a bad day, if I'm in a shitty mood, if everything in my day has been going terrible, I know exactly how to turn my day around.
Mhm.
I will order my favorite food. Lo and behold, my mood is going to be different. If I'm like having a fight with you, take me somewhere where I will like the food, and like I will look at that problem from such a different lens now. Like everything seems calm and peaceful. Like I'm not angry anymore. And it's vice versa. Like if I get my food and it's not what I wanted it to be.
Yeah. And so
You know
that's, I
what
mean,
I
so
mean?
that, so that's, I mean, it sounds like you have enough self-awareness that you can observe these patterns. And
Right.
if you are overwhelmed with, like, the bitch pass is surfacing, it's like, it's coming up. It seems like the way that you're speaking, you still have that kind of like meta awareness that, like, okay, I'm in shambles, but
Yeah.
it still seems like there's this like foundational knowing
Oh yeah. Yeah,
that,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
the
yeah.
I that is in shambles is not the entirety of I.
No, no, no.
It
Yeah,
is
yeah. No,
just,
like
and so
for sure.
that's the big thing. And that's like, Ram Dass has a quote. He says, who you think you are is in, or who you think you are is vulnerable. Who you are is invulnerable.
Mm,
Who you think you are
yeah.
is, they didn't cut the crust off my sandwich. That's who you think you are, right?
Right.
Who you are doesn't need that fucking sandwich, right? Like,
Mm,
that's like that. So like, there's that part. And so within that, play, be angry, be silly, be happy, be joyful, violently cry, like ugly face cry, like, have all of it,
yeah.
and no, there's that kind of like that echo or that whisper in the background. It's like, okay, like, there's a like a capital I that
Yeah.
exists, and this is kind of like the lowercase version right now. And
Exactly.
as long as you're practicing that awareness, and that could be, the practice and that awareness could be literally just us having this conversation right now. Like, anybody
Yeah.
listening to this, unless you're like tuning out, 'cause you're like, this is, bullshit, not interested, whatever, then, like, that's fine. But if you're even allowing yourself to your mind to wander into this idea, then you are practicing it right now. So
Yeah.
just having those little reminders throughout the day. And I mean, I think, like, reflecting on your death, like that Stoic philosophy, like coming back and having some practice of, like, the temporality of this life. Is it worth me throwing a tizzy because the crust isn't cut off my peanut butter jelly sandwich? If your answer to that is yes, then great, it's your dream. But
Yeah.
probably if you literally, someone that was close to you you knew they were going to be transitioning out of their body in the next, I don't know, day, week, year, or
Yeah.
whatever, you just definitely knew, suddenly your focus would be more about connecting with that person,
Yeah.
connecting
No,
with
I agree.
yourself. Like, let's just go
For
for a
sure.
hike. Let's be with each other. Like, I'm so grateful just to be with you right now.
Yeah.
I don't care about the fucking sandwich.
Yeah. Those are the things of someone like me is gonna need to hear in a moment like that where my food sucks. It's like help
but
me.
be with it though. Like, I'm not saying, I'm not,
Yeah.
I think be with it, and have that meta awareness of, like, here's me doing the thing, and I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna roll, and I'm gonna hit the floor, and I'm gonna scream into a pillow, and I'm gonna punch my boyfriend in the shoulder, and ah.
It's so funny, like you say that, like literally the worst day me and my ex-boyfriend ever had was the day that like I was super hungry and we finally we were driving from like fucking Barcelona to Madrid for like hours and I was so hungry. There was like nowhere to go. Like I was starving. And like we finally find a place, we go and it was the worst meal I had ever had ever. I'm not exaggerating. It was just like the shittiest restaurant that was like in the middle of the way, like not really in a city still.
Yep.
And oh my god, like he would still tell me like I was so scared of you that day. I was
And
like,
that,
you
I
poor
mean,
guy.
that's, you're not alone in that. There's the specifics of this research, I'm foggy on. You have to look it up, but there was research that was done tracking judges, and
Yes,
it was
I
I don't know
know
what,
which one.
the defendants were there for exactly, but they were, if it was
Before their
before the
lunch.
judges had lunch and their blood sugar
Yeah,
was low, they were like significantly higher likelihood of convicting them or whatever the thing was.
yeah.
And if it was after that they felt satiated, suddenly, like, these really sweet,
Oh
compassionate
yeah.
judges.
That would be
So
me as a judge.
yeah, so you're not alone in it.
Yeah.
But then within that, again, there is, as long as you are, and this comes from most any like meditation practice, which again, I'm not samadhi transcendent yogi person on top of a mountain someplace. It's just things that I dabble with and read about. Um, but in most meditation practices, what you are doing is you are releasing attachment to the bad and the good.
Mm.
So you releasing attachment to the bad isn't enough. It's good or bad. I still have this invulnerable foundation. Most of my bandwidth, or at least half of my bandwidth, is invested in that invulnerable part. And if
Mm.
you look at, maybe like an individual like in the Vietnamese situation in is it called Tenement Square? The guy's self would be self-immolation, self-immolified. I don't know. He burned himself, performed self-immolation.
Why?
You didn't see this?
No.
It's like the most famous photo on the planet, literally. I actually posted on my Instagram a while ago.
He burned
Um,
himself alive?
burned himself alive. Yeah, let
What
himself. Yeah,
happened?
covered himself gas. It was a big protest. It was a whole thing. Um,
What was the cause? What was the reason?
I don't know I don't know what the protest was exactly about. It was a huge thing that I should
I mean,
know.
I'm
And
sure he
it's
had a
embarrassing.
reason.
Yeah, it was.
How does it connect with what you're saying?
I just think it's interesting. No, I'm just
Mm.
joking. The reason it connects with what I'm saying, self-immolation, dude. What do you mean?
More people should do it, really.
Well, what that I guess maybe select people. No, that's terrible. So that um, the reason that relates is that would be the far end of the spectrum example of a person being so unattached
Yeah.
to their crust of their sandwich not being cut off correctly that it's
Yeah.
like, I don't even need my body, bro. Like I'm
Yeah.
not afraid of transitioning out of this body. I'm like, I am to be, if that's a like 100, to be like a 45,
That's crazy.
on a scale to being close to that level of unattachment, not disassociation,
Yeah.
where I'm
Yeah.
depressively, kind of getting out of here, but actually practicing, having, a daily or a lifetime practice of bad or good, I don't get rocked. Like
Mm.
that's autonomy, that's sovereignty, that's power. And then from there, play. You have the
Yeah.
foundation to play.
He was so sure in his beliefs and that he was right about what he thought that, I mean, he committed suicide at the end of the day. So,
Yeah, sure. But yeah,
you know,
but what is suicide? I have to look at the details of what it was. It's like a massive thing that
right.
it would be great if both you and
So
I
it's like
didn't
if you kill
really
yourself
talk
with
about
the
it on
right
here.
reasons, does it make it any less of a negative thing to do as killing yourself if you have like spiritual reasons for it?
Yeah,
You
sure.
know,
I mean,
so
that goes into a whole other topic, but the
right.
concept of but I mean, it's a fine concept to explore. But the concept of and like voluntarily ending one's life, that
Right.
being a bad thing is a story that's like culturally, that's indoctrinated. There could be the story that if, once I come to a point where I'm not of use to the tribe, the best thing for me to do is transition out of the tribe because, now suddenly I'm becoming a liability. I'm not saying that that's like the right thing, but
Right.
there could be different, or if a person has maybe some genetic defect or some
Sounds like
type
he
of.
just didn't have good friends and he wasn't getting any pussy. That's
No,
what
the
that
guy,
sounds
no,
like to me.
the guy that did the self-immolation, that was for like this. It's so embarrassing that I don't know why the Tiananmen Square thing happened. But what happened from that is that person's life or sacrifice of his own life became a global symbol and ended up having massive impact to the lives of, thousands or, ultimately probably millions of people after that. So does
Well,
the
if it
sacrifice of.
inspired people, then
Yeah, I mean, does a sacrifice? It comes. This is like the there's like a popular. It's like a train, like the trolley question. If you're,
yeah,
if you sacrifice one, is it okay?
yeah.
There's like, okay,
So
there's
like,
two people. There's a couple kids on the tracks. You have the choice to do that, or you can, run the train off the track, save the kids, but then kill a group of 10 people. What do you do? And it's like, it's
Wait,
really, it's up to you to explore.
well, wait. Say that again for people that don't know exactly, because that was one of the most interesting. I think it was a lecture. I remember I think I was listening to it in my car. It was like a Yale lecture or something, right? This professor brings it up,
Yeah,
or at least that's where I heard it.
there's different versions of this as well. I'll just kind of make up my own version of it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So essentially, what the basis of the trolley question or idea would be. I'm just making this. This isn't the exact thing, but it's the same concept. Would be, so you're driving a train. You got your trolley, and then you see up ahead of you, there's one 10-year-old boy, and he's got his foot stuck in the track, and you have the choice to either. This is where, in my analogy, it doesn't make sense because I don't know how the trolley will come off the tracks. But let's say you have the choice to take the trolley off the tracks and pour the trolley into 10 other people, 10 workers or something like that. But you can
Five.
see
It's five. Don't
five, whatever,
10 would be crazy.
sure, five. But
Right.
what you're doing is you're weighing life, and it's like I can see the boy's face. He's like crying, he's scared. It's like I can viscerally have this connection with him. Or there's this group of, call it 5 people over here, that maybe it's a little bit more distant, or so it's ultimately it's story. So in that case, does that person sacrificing himself to potentially maybe like end a war or end
Right.
something else, is it worth it? It's like, well,
Yeah. Well, that's actually, from what I remember, that's not what I remember was the point of the study, or from what I remember, because this was like 5 years ago when I heard about it. I think it was,
I'll look it up.
if you see the one person in front of you stuck, and there's nothing you can do, and you hit them, it's an accident. That person will then be dead by a tragic accident.
Yeah.
But then if you choose to change your path and kill the other people, then it's free will. So then those people died not from accident, but from your decision, because you made the decision to turn the trolley and then kill the other person or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't remember if it was one person or five
I'm
or
looking.
whatever,
I'm
but
looking. I'm looking at it now. So it's you're running. So the trolley has 2 tracks, and
mm,
you're running straight. You'd run into 5 people. You're right about that,
right,
or whatever.
right.
There's different ones where sometimes I'm seeing it's more than that, but whatever. It's a group of
Or
people,
you can turn and hit one
or you can
person,
turn and hit one person. Yeah,
but
exactly.
then it would be due to your decision making and not due to accident. But the first one, if you don't do anything, you'll kill more people, but it'll be due to accident. Or you can choose
Oh,
to turn, you would kill less people, but then it's not an accident anymore because you made that choice to turn,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
So then
looking at
it's
it
like,
now.
which one would you rather do? Kill 5 people on accident, or kill one person on
Intentionally.
intentionally, basically?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and again, I think that it is very similar to the concept of the guy choosing to self-immolate in the name of a
Yeah,
grander cause. Do you
that's dark.
consciously the trolley cart problem? Do you consciously choose to end your own life? So you're killing yourself to save 5 people, or 5 million or 1,000 or 50,000 or whatever, or not.
Yeah,
And all of it, and again, once again, like it's your dream. There isn't in the trolley cart problem. There is no solution to it. Like, is there a correct answer to the trolley problem? No solution. Is the response. No problem.
that's why it's fascinating, and it's like such a debate, because it's like whatever you choose, there's like no right or wrong answer. It's like I would choose to kill the less people just because that makes more sense to me. So then, do I go the rest of my life, condemning myself that, oh, I made that choice to kill that person? Fine, I'll be okay with the
And
guilt,
that's and
knowing
so
that I saved 4 people.
so where that comes back to you being that pissed off about your dinner in Madrid. Once again, it comes back to the stories that we tell ourselves. And so that's in relation to like PTSD, for example, with soldiers. If they
Mm.
went through some type of terrible act, uh, and then they come back and they have the belief that I was a patriot. So in your case, you choosing to kill that one person, you're essentially a patriot. You're saying like, cool, like I'm doing this for the greater good, so you can move on and ethically, morally, consciously you move on and like, I don't feel guilty about that. But
Yeah.
then suddenly you find out new information, and you find out that that person was actually the next, or the people, whatever, the person that you kill was like Mahatma Gandhi, and the people that
Or
you could
your
have killed, whatever,
family. How about
or
that?
your
It was
family,
your family
whatever, right?
member. Make it
Yeah.
even
So whatever.
harder.
So objectively, nothing changed, but your story of the experience shifted. Now, suddenly you
Yeah.
go from a place from feeling consciously well to suddenly in this deep, dark pit of PTSD and despair. And
Yeah.
objectively, nothing changed. Your interpretation of the objective experience shifted. Suddenly, everything shifts. So, in that scenario, that will happen to the human psyche, the mind. So, is it possible for us to leverage that as a tool that works for us as well? And I think that it is.
Yeah.
That's like Jordan Peterson's good about this. He has like what is
Love
this
that
course?
guy.
What is this course called? It's like rewriting your life or something like that. It's describing yourself, and it's something like that. It's like writing your life. It's not that, but it's something like that. But within that, it's like you are the author of your life. Like this is a
Yeah.
story. This is a story.
You really
And
are though. Yeah.
you really are. And at any
Yeah.
moment, your life can be a comedy. It could be a drama. It could
Yeah.
be
Or it could
whatever
be all
you
of it, Sometimes it's fun to like
ultimately it
play
is. It
around.
is. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's really beautiful. And,
Yeah.
people that are like pain becomes an interesting topic, and like, what is pain? And something that's interesting in relation to that, having a limitation in freedom or choice can actually heighten a person's sensation to pain, and that will happen with
Say that again? What happens?
a lack of freedom or choice. And this is specifically in relation to having access to painkillers
Oh,
in
I
the
see. I
hospital.
see. Hmm.
So if you have the choice, like you press the button for how much painkillers you want, then you need or you desire less painkillers. Suddenly you're like, oh no, like I'm fine, because you feel in control. A
Yeah.
person that feels like they don't have control of their dosages, suddenly pain becomes heightened and the desire for painkillers
Right.
increases. So having that sensation of um, responsibility, like
Right.
the literal translation of like able to respond, I'm able to respond. Um, Suddenly, we feel like the sensation, like the pain of life starts to diminish because we feel like we're in control. But the feeling like we're in control, ultimately, once again, this is getting a little bit like meta on top of meta, but even that is a story. Because do you really have control while you're, being hucked through space at however many thousands of miles an hour? The earth is blasting, through the atmosphere and rotating, and there's solar flares, and there could be a comet that
Right.
comes in any time. Like, how much control do you really have?